everybody, John here from All Miniatures Great and Small, and today we're going to be looking at Dawn of Iron, the American Civil War at Sea, 1861 to 1865. This is a naval miniatures game from Scary Biscuit Studios, and something I've been looking forward to for a long time. I do like naval games, and the American Civil War is really a fascinating period in naval warfare. So today what we're going to do is I'm going to look at the game and kind of go over how it plays. This isn't going to be an in-depth tutorial of how to play, but I will cover all the basic mechanics of how to play so that you guys as viewers can determine if this is something you might be interested in checking out. It's a pretty interesting game, and I'm excited to show it to you. So let's go ahead and get started. I will say this game is a print and play product, and it's available on Wargame Vault. I'll put a link down in the video description below so you can check it out if you'd like to. It is a print and play game. If you're not familiar with that term, basically you buy PDFs. There's no physical media to buy, and you print it out yourself, and then you play that way. So for example, I've just printed this out on my printer. I bought some small sleeve cards to put the paper cards into, so they're a little bit sturdier. They're slippier, but that way, you know, it's not flimsy paper you're playing with. You could get it professionally printed at you know, a printer shop and have it put on real card and lined up and real nice. That's going to obviously cost you a lot, but obviously printing in color can cost you a lot on an inkjet printer, or you could just go with black and white. I know that Scary Biscuit Studios they offer a fast build print and play pack, which is a kind of a simplified version, a little bit simplified graphics, and then they have a full-blown Dawn of Iron bundle. That's the rules and the tokens and what you need. They also produce some battle packs. There are a couple that are out now at the time of filming this, and I'm sure there's going to be more. For example, there's the Battle of Cherbourg, the Battle of Albemarle Sound. So you've got some interesting battle packs, and that's something we'll talk about a little bit later as well. But this video, we're going to be concerned just with the base game and how it plays, and if you'll enjoy it. What do you need to play? Well, so what I have in front of you is basically what you need to play. I've got a PDF of the rules, which I printed out, and you know, you could just have it as a PDF on your tablet or phone or whatever and follow the rules there. You don't necessarily have to print it out. You need some dice, some six-sided dice. You'll need a table and terrain, obviously, to play on. The nice thing is, you know, you can play anywhere. Naval games don't require a lot of terrain, so there's not a lot of cost overhead for terrain. One of the things I like about naval war games, I mean, you could have little islands and things like that. But I've got a blue battle mat here that you see. You know, a lot of American Civil War battles probably shouldn't be played on blue water, more like brown, muddy water. And you could do that as well. There's also, with a lot of these battles being in rivers and whatnot, oftentimes there's coastline and things that could give you modeling options if you'd like. So you do have that, but you do need some place to play, and I recommend to get started, just, you know, clear off your dining room table and plop your models there. You always need a measuring device, so you got a tape measure, and then you've got tokens. The game uses a lot of tokens. I just printed these on card, and you know, for example, there's the boarding action token, and I'll explain how this works. There's tokens for orders, movement orders, and then there's tokens for speed and damage, stuff like that. Okay, then we've got ship cards. The ship cards give us all the kind of information we need about our ship. So this, for example, is the card for the USS Monitor, and it's got all the information you need to play. We'll go over these stats in just a moment. On the other side of the card, it just has some history, which is really nice as well. I don't believe the Fast Play pack has the history on the back of the cards. I think they're just one-sided. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments, but there you go. But yeah, so you have a card for each and every ship. You also have a couple of decks of cards. You have a cumulative damage deck, a critical damage deck, order cards, and ship upgrade cards. So those are the basic components that you're going to need to play the game. Alright, let's briefly go over the ship cards. So, like I said, every ship is going to have a card. There's also other things that might have cards, for example, maybe shore emplacements, things like that. Alright, so we've got basically a symbol that shows you what side the ship is on, the American flag for the US, and the Confederate flag for the Confederate States. Then we've got the name of the ship and what it is. For example, the monitor here is a monitor and has a steam screw keyword. Underneath that, it has the armor rating, so its armor is classified as ironclad, and that's going to be important when it's taking fire. In the top right hand corner, you have the point value, so you see that the monitor is 60 points, the Virginia over there is 64 points. And then beneath that you have the stats. On the left hand side you've got characteristics, and then batteries to the right. So the batteries are basically the gun layout for the ship in question. We're going to go ahead and look at the Virginia now, because the Virginia has more batteries. For example, the monitor only has one. Obviously it's got just its turret. Alright, so let's talk about all of the stats first here for the Virginia. So the Virginia has a command rating of 2, and that tells you exactly how quickly the ship is, how good the ship is at executing orders. So the higher that number, the less responsive that ship is. And basically you're pre-programming your turns. So you put down 2 orders, so you have to look 1 turn in advance for what you want to put your order down as. I'll explain more later. Then beneath that we have speed and acceleration. So the speed is your ship's maximum speed, and acceleration is how much you can adjust your speed by. So for example, the Virginia has a speed of 4 and an acceleration of 2. So if it's at a dead stop on 1 turn, the fastest it can move is 2. It could accelerate to 2 on the next turn, and then it could accelerate by another 2 to a 4 on the next turn. So it would take basically 3 turns to get from speed 0 to max speed for something like the Virginia there. Alright, then we have size. The size is how large the ship is. So for example, the size of the Virginia is classified as M or medium. There's small, medium, and large. And the second, the number after that medium is the draft. So the draft is 4, and that corresponds to water depth. So 4 would be deep, and there's, the scale goes up to 5. So this ship needs to be in deeper waters. It can't operate in the shallows, for example, because its hull is kind of far down. Then let's talk about the batteries. So the batteries are the weapons. That's what you get to shoot at the other guy. So here we see that the ship has basically 3 batteries listed. The ship's main batteries are always listed first in red. Okay, so you've got 9-inch Dahlgren smoothbore cannons. That's going to be the main battery. 16-inch range, and it's 3 for the number of dice you're going to roll, and the size is medium. So those smoothbores are medium size cannons, basically. You also have a 7-inch Brook rifle, which is both fore and aft. That has a nice 32-inch range. And then you have a 6.4-inch Brook rifle on the sides, and that is also a nice 32-inch range. All those guns are medium and we'll talk a little bit again later on what that means. Firing arcs are pretty straightforward. Basically, you just go from your center of your ship, and it's 90-degree forward, back, broadsides for the left and right, or port and starboard for you more nautical themed folks. Alright, next let's talk about the turn sequence, because the turn sequence is pretty straightforward for this game. It's something I like about it. There are only 3 phases. There's the command phase, the control phase, and the end phase. So in the command phase, it's very straightforward. All you're doing is you're putting assigning orders to your ships, and most ships are going to need orders under most turns. Then in the control phase, you are taking turns, players are taking turns going back and forth by choosing a ship and completing its actions. So, the monitor goes, then the Merrimack goes, and back and forth it goes. And then in the end phase, there's a bunch of effects that might need to be resolved, things like repairs, and all that. Both players do that, so both players do the same command phase, both players do the same end phase and swap back and forth. So there's no, there's no Union player turn and Confederate player turn. It's just one turn with ships swapping back and forth. So now we're just going to go through the steps of the game and show you some of those options. So for example, let's say the start of the game, we are in the command phase and we need to place our orders. We just look at each one of our ship cards and we see, for example, the Monitor has a command of 1, the Virginia or Merrimack has a command rating of 2. So basically you would put a number of order counters down next to the ship, and those would go here on the left hand side. The Merrimack, for example, would need 2, so we would put 2 of our order counters down, and I know my order counters aren't cut exactly perfect, but we'd see. So for the Monitor, it's going to be very easy. It's just going to activate 1 order a turn, and at the next turn it would get a new order, and so on. The Virginia player is going to have to use a little forethought though, because we've got 2 orders. So on turn 1, this order, the closest order to the card, is going to be activated. So we would flip it over and say flank speed. This one would move over, and on turn 2, the Virginia player would have to put a second order counter down and basically keep feeding counters in there. So they have to think a turn ahead when they place their orders down. So this order is not going to be active on turn 2, it's going to be active on turn 3. What is the game state going to be on turn 3? Well, you're going to have to make an educated guess and hope you pick the right one. This is a similar mechanic to things you might see like in Star Wars Armada. And these special rules are also reminiscent of special rules you might find in games like Battlefleet Gothic, Drop Zone Commander, things like that. Each one of these orders, for example, gives you a bonus rule. You could move and shoot without having any orders on the table, using any orders, but typically orders will give you a bonus or boost to what you're trying to accomplish. So now with all of the ships given orders, the command phase is done, and now we go into the control phase. So in the control phase, it might, depending on what mission you're playing, it might tell you who the attacker is or who's going to get that first, basically first activation. So for our example, we're going to say that the Virginia is going to activate first. So when it activates, so the Confederate player says, I'm activating the Virginia, you do 3 things. You flip over your order token. So we're going to say flank speed. We're going to move this one over, so now this is kind of queued up for next turn. Then once the order is revealed, we look at what our order does, and there are cards to give us a, give us a clue if we don't remember. So this says flank speed, movement. The captain needs more speed. When this order is active, add +1 to the ship's acceleration rating. Okay. So normally the Virginia has an acceleration of 2, so for this turn it's going to count as having an acceleration of 3. And remember, the Virginia has a max speed of 4. So if this ship was currently going speed 1, with flank speed it could jump all the way up to speed 4 rather than going to speed 3 with a normal move. Okay, so that's an example of flank speed. After you've resolved your order and taken into effect whatever that order might tell you to do, then it's the movement phase. So let's say at the start of the game the Virginia was going speed 1. The movement is basically your speed times 2 in inches. So if speed 1 means that this ship is moving 2 inches in the turn, so you would grab whatever measuring device you're using and move the ship ahead straight 2 inches. At the end of the actual movement of the ship, you can then turn the ship up to 45 degrees left or right, which we'll just kind of eyeball it here, but we'll say 45 degrees. Now you don't have to move the complete 45 degrees, but you could move anywhere up to 45 degrees, and you're basically pivoting from the back of your ship, whatever your ship is. The back of the ship stays, and you pivot from that point. So we'll say that 45 degrees there. Also at the end of the movement phase, you change your speed. So we're going flank speed. So normally, again, our acceleration is a 2, so we could increase our speed from 1 to 3. But with flank speed, we can actually increase our speed by +1, so we can go to speed 4. So we would put a speed 4 marker to remind us next turn what our speed's going to be when we actually move our ship. We'll also note for movement there are rules for sail power. There are rules for moving in reverse. There's all kinds of the rules you would typically expect for a naval game that you would need. So know that those are in there as well. But at its most basic, you're going to be moving, and you move in a straight line, and then you turn. So you really have to, again, think a turn ahead as far as where your ship's going to be. If you're going to dodge something, you want to start dodging it a turn beforehand. You can also use an order. For example, the monitor here has hard to port as its order. And the hard to port order is pretty handy. Basically, the ship may turn up to 45 degrees to port at the start of your move. So in essence, if you're doing a hard to port or a hard to starboard, you would move your 45, then move your movement, then conceivably you could turn another 45, giving you basically a 90-degree turn, 45 at the start, 45 at the end. So the hard to ports are very, or hard to starboard, are very good actions if you can time them right. So for example, something like the monitor, which has an a command rating of 1, you kind of can always tell, well, I'm going to need to I don't want to crash into the Virginia, so I need to make a hard turn to the port or left to avoid either crashing into the Virginia or getting rammed by the Virginia. So again, you're going to have to think ahead. And that's one of the cool features of the game, is that thinking ahead, that chess play of what's going to happen in future turns as far as movement. Because naval games are often all movement driven. Okay, so now we've talked about the movement part of your action. So now let's talk about shooting, because that's the fun part, right? So as we talked about on the cards, every ship, well, theoretically every armed ship has a weapon of some kind. And in the shooting phase, you get to shoot those weapons if you have targets for those weapons. So basically, in the shooting step, you start by targeting a ship. So for example, we're going to say the Virginia wants to shoot at the monitor there. The firing arcs are Again, basically 90-degree arcs from the center of the ship, giving you a 90-degree arc forward, back, left, and right. So this is obviously going to be a broadside. It's basically, I don't know if you can see this laser on my table, but it's, you know, going to be, the monitor is going to be in the broadside of the Virginia, not the fore, not the aft. So we would look at the broadside ratings of the Virginia, and it has the 9-inch Dahlgren smoothbores, as well as a 6.4-inch Brook rifle. So it's actually got quite a few shots from its broadside, and you can see there are multiple cannons, and that's what this is representing. Okay, so now that we know our target, we're picking the monitor as our target, we look at firing solution, which is basically range. Is this ship in range, and what is this ship's target size? So we see that the monitor is, where is it here on the card? Small, size S. So it's a small target. Ships with a small target modifier are hit on a 5. Medium-sized ships like the Virginia are hit on a 4. So basically, we're going to take our dice. We've got 3 dice of shooting for our 9-inch Dahlgrens and 1 die of shooting for our 6.4-inch Brook rifle. We have our base to hit number, which is going to be a 5, and we are going to now look and see if we can add any modifiers to it. If we are at point blank range, which is within the ship's half the ship's firing range, so like the Dahlgrens have a range of 16, so half of that would be 8 inches. Is the monitor within 8 inches? Why, yes it is. So instead of being, so we figure out the strength of the hit next. So we've hit our ship, or we've hit the monitor 3 times with our broadside, so our gunners are really on point right now. With the strength of hit, I'm going to have this chart pop up on the screen for you. We basically compare the weight of the gun versus the armor of the target. So we can see that the Virginia's guns are all medium. The monitor is counted as being having ironclad armor. So if we look at our medium and our ironclad, we see that it's going to be a 2+, basically a 2+ save. However, here we have modifiers as well. So one of them is range. If it's a point blank shot, which is again half range or less, the shooting battery's rating is increased by 1 column to the right. So instead of a 2+, it moves 1 to the right, and it is now a 3+. And you'll see that that is a yellow 3+, which is important because that means it's going to be a cumulative damage card rather than a critical hit. Alright, so the Union player now makes his saves. So for these cannons, and all these cannons now are essentially going to do the same thing, so it's okay to roll them all together. We need a 3+ to basically bounce the shot off our ironclad armor. Alright, so we have 2 fails and 1 bounce. So the monitor's really not doing well. So again, we look at that color, and the color is a yellow, which means we're going to get a cumulative damage. So we draw our first cumulative damage card to give it to the monitor, and we get boiler damaged. One of the boilers has become damaged. If this is damage on a steamship, it is acceleration -1. Otherwise, no other effect and counts as general repairable damage. And then you'll see it also says repair 4+ there, and that's in the repair phase. So we're going to put that down by the monitor to remind us. And then we can look at the second damage card, and we get crew fatigue. When the ship receives a crew shaken damage result from enemy shooting, roll a die. On a 5+, the ship takes 1 cumulative damage. So basically it's making the ship more susceptible to future damage. So we're going to put both of these down by the monitor to denote that it's taken that damage. Another thing to note is the hull value of the monitor is 4. If I ever have 4 cards or more down here, 4 damage cards or more, then the ship becomes a derelict, and it basically will stop moving, can't shoot, and just kind of floats there as a derelict until theoretically you could remove cards through repair to not become a derelict. Alright, let's say the monitor wants to shoot back at the Virginia. Well, the monitor has a turret, so basically it's got 2 dice of shooting all the way around, like a 360 degree. To hit the Virginia, it's a medium ship, so you have a base of 4. But because we are at short range for the monitor as well, we are going to be hitting the Virginia on 3s. So let's go ahead and roll that up, and the monitor answers the call and hits the Virginia twice. Alright, so let's bring up the damage chart again and look at what the Virginia needs to save. So the Virginia is also counted as ironclad armor, so it has the best armor in the game. It took a hit from a heavy gun, which normally would be a 3+ to save. However, because we are at short range, that goes to a 4+, and you'll notice it's red, which is going to be a critical damage card, not not a cumulative damage card, and critical damage cards are typically worse. So the Virginia player would pick up the dice. I now need some 4-ups to save that damage. Ooh, okay, so the Virginia fails both. So let's move this up a little bit. Kind of excited to play out the rest of this game. It's getting interesting, but this is just for practice. All right. So the first one is armor fractured. That sounds pretty bad. So the ship's armor is rated at least 1 level worse than it currently is. When this ship takes damage, read the damage table 1 row closer to the top. So that means normally it's ironclad. Now the armor value is moving up to, I forget what that's called, sorry, light ironclad. So basically she's considered having light ironclad armor for the rest of the game. You'll notice, unlike the cumulative cards with the repair number, these don't have a repair number. They're going to stick on the ship. And down at the bottom, it also modifies the ship's characteristic, hull -1. So the hull of 7 goes to 6. We're on our way to sinking the Virginia. The second critical damage card is, oh, armored fractured as well. Let's get another one. I may not have shuffled my severe list. Ooh, that sounds bad too. This damage affects all batteries on the ship. Add a flooding token. If the ship ever starts its turn with more flooding tokens than its hull value, it sinks. Ship's characteristic, hull -1. All batteries on the side are -1. So now we've placed our flooding token by the Virginia to let us remind us that the ship has taken some damage and is now in a flooding state. So the monitor horrendously hammered the Virginia with some good shooting there. All right, so since all of our ships in our little engagement here have activated, they've completed their activation, then you go on to the end phase, and you go on to the end phase as a group. First thing you do is damage control, and each ship can either remove a token or attempt to remove any 1 repairable damage card assigned to it. And there you would roll a die. So for example, let's pretend we're the Virginia player first. We can't remove either one of these 2 cards because they don't have a repair option. So they're stuck to our ship for good. But I could have my crew during the repair phase remove this flooding. And basically if I keep doing it, I can keep the ship from filling up with water. If I start to get other damage cards, I can maybe choose to remove the damage card instead and keep the flooding on there. But in this example, the no-brainer would be to remove that flooding token. The monitor player, let's say, wants to get rid of this crew fatigue. So we look at the card, and we see crew fatigue is a 4+ repair. So I'm going to grab my die and get a 1, so I fail my repair, so crew fatigue stays on the monitor. So that would be step 1, damage control. Next thing would be any ships that sink, that have their hull reduced to 0. For example, the Virginia is now down to hull 5 from 7. That ship would sink and become a wreck. Then the next thing you do is you discard whatever order token was in play this turn. So flank speed would go away. Oh, sorry, hard to port should have been over here. That would go away as well. And then we would check for victory conditions. We would see if the mission was done. And then in the next turn, again, you'd start again by placing your order tokens next to your ships and going again. So that, in a nutshell, is how the game is played. There are lots of additional rules. Ramming can play a big part in it. The American Civil War did have ships that were dedicated ramming ships. The Virginia did ram the Minnesota, I think it was. But anyway, ramming is part of the game and is a tactic. I'm not going to cover it in this video, but in future videos I'm sure we will have ramming opportunities. There are optional rules in the game. There again are all kinds of cool things that can add out or flesh out your game. But the idea here is to have a pretty straightforward and fun way to play. Alright, so that's my how to play. Now kind of my thoughts on the game. This game scratches a certain itch for me, like I said at the beginning, in that I like naval games. So it's already in my good graces because it's a naval game. While I do enjoy, probably when I was a teenager I enjoyed it more, very crunchy, detailed, armored games, I do like the simplicity that this game brings to the table. There aren't, for example, the fact what the gun is either heavy or medium or light. There's not super detailed penetration values, tables that you need to mess with. It's just a very nice abstract way to do it. And that means that yes, you can fight a duel here, but you can also do small squadron actions, which are something that happened fairly often in the naval battles of the American Civil War. I do plan to do a separate video to talk about the battle packs that are available or will be available for this game. Those are kind of interesting source documents that give you a scenario, the ships involved, as well as some really cool history. I know Mike has done a really great job. The naval battles of the American Civil War are often, put to the side when compared to land battles. It's definitely, again, a niche area. The Monitor and the Merrimack obviously are very famous, but there are so many other actions out there that would be pretty cool to game on the tabletop, and we'll be doing more of this. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this look at Dawn of Iron, the American Civil War at Sea from 1861 to 1865 from Scary Biscuit Studios. If you did, please do sound off in the discussion down below. If you want to look at or pick up a copy of Dawn of Iron for yourself, check out our link down below as well, and you can pick up that PDF and start playing. There are lots of miniatures out there, either ones you can purchase, ones you can 3D print. So getting in isn't very hard at all, and obviously you don't need a ton of ships to have a good time. So again, I hope you enjoyed this. Please do consider giving us a like and subscribe. Click that bell to receive notification when we release new content. As always, thanks for watching and keep on gaming.